umaga po sa inyo lahat. Thank you, Miss Marichu. Akala ko, mas tao ang harap ko, yung pala puro camera.
Nasa likod yung mga reporters mo, ma'am. Yung mga Senate reporters na humabol dito. Hindi mo nila ang Senate hearing doon. That we review. I heard, ma'am, you are supposed to. Okay, so. Ang lakas ko. Oo, salamat, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And I am very honored also that this will be your first full-blown press conference after the 3 days of elections.
So please be kind.
Yes, ma'am. Kaya lang, ma'am, sabi mo nga, you came all the way from Quezon City and it took you 1.5 hours just to get here. Let me get your first-hand experience every day, just like me. Ako, pag okay, Manila to Paranaque, it used to get me to go home 1 hour. At dapat 30 minutes lang by travel. Walang traffic. Trafficless. Holiday, 30 minutes. Tapos, as 5 years old, 7 years na ako, naging 1 hour. Okay, bearable pa. Tapos, panahon na nag-last 2 minutes ito sinoy sa mga bus factor sa next connector, naging 1.5. Ngayon, BF to Manila. Ngayon, nagkaroon na sa ng Manila Digis, 2 hours. We are connecting this issue to your pet bill right now, the proposed emergency powers to address the severe traffic crisis in the country. Ma'am, we have your views right now on this.
Dito pala si Mr. Alcoa. Kasama namin pala. Doon. Alam ko, hindi naman ito isang karanasan lang natin. Lahat ng mga narito na ay nakakaranas ng ganyan. Kaya, kung kayo ma'am, 1.5 hours, from Paranaque lang to Manila, ako naman, average of close to 2 hours just to go to the Senate from my house, and then, probably even worse, returning home. Kasi yun yung medyo
6 hours na traffic.
So, kung isipin po ninyo, gaano ba katagal sa mga Senate reporters natin na naririto, gaano ba katagal usually ang plenary? Mismo dun sa plenary, mahaba-haba na yung 3 oras. So, mas mahaba pa yung ginugol mo sa traffic kesa dun sa actual na nandun ka sa plenaryo. Pero syempre, may mga iba ka naman trabaho sa labas nun. Kaya nga, hindi naman nakakapagtaka. Time of the last administration, the JICA study said it's about 2 billion a day wasted. Now, Tugate is about 3 billion pesos wasted a day in traffic. So the president has already said that he would like to have his emergency powers, at least for traffic. We are aware of this. Now, this administration to succeed because we, in this particular regard, because we will all be beneficiaries. Now, I understand the bottleneck, so to speak, with regards to traffic procurement.
Yeah.
Number 2 is coordination with the local governments and right-of-way issues. And many other issues that can be addressed perhaps by an emergency power. But ma'am, here's something that will probably shorten the process. In our procurement law, there are several ways that you can procure. So there is selective bidding, there is direct bidding, and there's negotiated procurement. Or yun yung sinasabi nila na mas gusto nila. So they will choose a reputable company that can deliver, that will probably have the right capitalization, the right equipment, track record, etc. That can be done with the emergency powers because you can go direct and then you don't have to go through the entire COA process. What we are trying to safeguard again is that when you rest power in one person, even if the person will delegate, it can still be quite dangerous. That's why our abuses, or yes, definitely it could be open to abuses. Because there's always the other side of the spectrum. They can be ultra efficient and fair, or they can also be abusive. But so the 3 conditions are: number 1, whatever emergency powers we grant should be FOI compliant.
Okay.
Number two,
Pero ma'am, FOI compliant, executive pa lang yun. Ikaw wala pang FOI.
pero for the emergency powers, we can speculate,
Kasi
stipulate
executive department na.
that even the local governments that will be involved will have to be FOI compliant. But it's really in the part of the contracts that we enter into, and also the contractors that they will hire. Number two, aside from FOI compliant,
Okay ka, pati private sector, dapat FOI compliant din.
at
Private
least
contractor.
pagdating sa qualification po nila, opo. Ito naman, katulad ng nangyari dun sa maintenance ng MRT, kung meron na silang track record, capitalization, sino yung mga owners nila, yung mga owners, baka mamaya may kamag-anak sa DOT,
Okay.
na hindi naman dapat. Diba? So, dapat kung sa mga proyekto, handa silang buksan din silang mga libro. Diba? Okay. Pero syempre, hindi man yung trade secrets. Kasama pa rin yun sa FY exceptions. Mga ibang bagay. Okay, number two, dapat fiscally responsible. I don't want to be paying for this debt for generations to come. So, no hidden costs, no guaranteed
Government guarantee.
sovereignty, wala mga ganyan. Okay? So, dapat yan, titignan natin. Number three, it's time-bound because it says also in the Constitution that it cannot exceed a certain number, which is 3 years, the term of Congress. Diba? So, pwede talaga 3 years, pwede shorter, but not more. And, of course, part of the time-bound is that there should be certain deliverables. Sabi ko nga, ma'am, we want to give them enough elbow room. Diba? So, try to foresee what you need, and we need to be able to see this is reasonable, achievable, but we can't foresee everything. So we need to be able, as long as the intention is there, it is not to cheat the public. We will allow them that. But again, we're not going to be allowing we're not going to be issuing them a blank check. That's what I always said.
How do you make it subjective to fiscally responsible?
Again, ma'am, di ba, pag sinabi natin fiscally responsible, yung mga industry standards.
Okay.
Like for example, magkano ba per kilometer talaga ang kalsada na ginagawa? Kasi hindi na natin matandaan eh. 10 million, let's just say. Pero ganito kakapal. Pero dahil ginagawa natin for the airport, may standard na mas makapal yan. So, yun ang pagbabasihan natin. So, this is just an example of kung 10 million yan sa normal na proseso, minamadali natin ito. Kailangan 24 hours ang trabaho ng mga trabahador. O sabihin na natin, medyo nag-increase ng 25-50%, maintindihan natin. But the payoff is more for the public because they'll be able to enjoy those roads much quicker.
And durable pa. We are imposing time bound. How about Congress itself? Are you imposing deadline to reach out to the bill?
When I was being interviewed, I was asked about this, and I said the bottleneck would not be in the Senate because we will be able to conduct hearings consistently and frequently. But what we ask the DOD is give us already as early as of now, while we are discussing the problems in our hearings, what your proposed projects are. Di ba pwedeng, di ba, wala pa eh.
May shopping list ka na.
May shopping list ka na, kahit na hindi pa kompleto.
Recover ng emergency powers na yun.
Opo, ma'am, at least the idea na kami general or ngayon, nagsabit kayo ng 10. Ito gani, pero parang kulang pa kasi pinag-aaralan pa namin dito. At least may range tayo. Kung iniisip namin 1 billion ito, may mga kulang pa. Bigyan natin ng konti, hanggang 2, no? Or, and ang isa pa, sa House, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, hindi pa po nila nabubuo ang chairmanships ng ibang committee nila. Hindi katulad sa amin, ang public services and franchises, magkasama po yan eh. Isa lang ang chairman. Ako po. Sa House, hindi ko alam kung meron na franchises, kung meron na rin yung, ewan ka po, alam ko, kung ano man yung committee nila doon.
Public works.
Public works. Baka, kami rin may public works. So,
Pero separate din kayo.
opo, yung sa amin pong public works, si Senator Manny Pacquiao yun doon.
Pero paano yung mga infra?
Kasi po, lahat yan under public services, kami yung overseer. That's why DPWH will also be invited in our hearings. With that, lahat yan. But part also the stipulation, as what they had during the time of President Ramos, is that there will be an oversight committee composed of the Senate. But ma'am, there will be a primary difference in our oversight. Number one, it perhaps didn't work well during that administration because they only published the contents of their contract 2 weeks after they signed. Whereas in our case, even while we are still drafting it, or even while they're still proposing it, we will already show you before it is even signed and agreed
Yung
upon.
contracts.
Proposals, whatever. So aside from the oversight of Senate and Congress, and I'm sure some of you will have some misgivings oversight yan. I, as chairman of the Public Services Committee in the Senate, will invite private sector advisors that will be part of it. To look at the contracts, kasi hindi mo kami expert,
Yes,
diba?
yes.
So actually, I'm looking at, hindi ko na muna sasabihin kasi hindi ko pa pinapaalam sa kanila. Kung ma-approve itong oversight, kasama mo doon isang ex-chief justice na pwedeng tumingin, isang economist, expert din sa at saka isang
Contractors,
engineer, whatever, na talagang alam yung mga contractor. Hindi pwedeng lahat gobyerno lang.
Speaking of working ahead of the bill, I was told you conducted last night a surprise inspection at the South Terminal, and you saw for yourself, and you can access it in her Twitter account, in Grace Po. Was for last night. How your personal impressions last night in your inspection?
It's always been my practice that we have the hearing and discuss something. I try go to those places physically.
Like you did in MRT.
I did that, but so alam ko yung sinasabi ko, hindi lang lahat nakabase sa papel at report. So pupunta ako doon after work. Ganyan naman, ma'am. It took us about from the Senate to go there 14 minutes at around 4:45.
Peak hour na yun, mga kulian.
So not bad, no? Makapagal highway pa. Okay. Pagdating doon, first time ko kasi nakita, hindi ko napapansin yung malaking abandoned Uniwide. Hindi ko talaga binusisi. So finally, pumasok kami. Sino sa inyo dito ang gumamit na ng Southwestern niya? Wala sa inyo dito nakarating pa sa Southwestern niya? Na pinagmamalaki ng MMDA noon.
Joseph, Abala, CDOTC
Ganito po yan. Noong 2013, if I'm not mistaken, the President signed an administrative order that said we should create those terminals. So Southwest, meron naman dito sa Taguig, isa pa, meron pa sa North.
Oo, nag-awin yung PLC at MMDA of that.
Correct. Yung basta, ang alam ko ma'am, MMDA yung in charge sa Southwest. Pero syempre under the jurisdiction dito, paano yung mga process. Tapos dito naman sa DPWH yata dito sa may Taguig na ilalagay na Ayala yan. Tapos yung sa North, either DPWH or DOTC. Ngayon, hanggang ngayon, wala pa yung sa South, yung dito sa may Taguig, wala pa yung sa North, hindi pa nabibigay lupa. Ang ginawa lang, yung dito nga sa Southwest. So, wow, galing, no? Para lumabas na. Ngayon, pumunta kayo doon. Unang-una, parang isang mall lang yan, may mga parking lots. Okay? Wala, hindi yan designated that is actually best for process. So, may mga lalakaran ka pa, ibig na seamless yung flow. Number two, yung mga walkways, doon sa ilalim, pagbaba mo ng footbridge, so, hindi napakadumi.
Oo,
no?
nakita ko yung litrato eh.
Opo, may
Look at sa Team Grace po, mga litrato.
may dumi na mukhang hindi nga dumi ng weird.
Parang natutulog doon yung mga tao sa walkway.
Opo, tapos meron mga nagdadala ng mga container na jug, yun na naglilamos, nagbugas. May mga makeshift ladder na parang bang pagpupunta kayo dun sa North Cemetery, Yung mga nilagay doon ng mga
Just to get
tao
through. Oo.
para maka-shortcut, no? Makasampa dun sa ano na yun. Ang waiting area, sabi ko, ano to, chapel? Kasi parang benches, no? Okay lang naman. It was not full at that time. Meron parang maliit na waiting area parang sa terminal ng airport. Sarado, hindi pwedeng gamitin. Sabi ko, ba't hindi ko pwedeng gamitin? Dahil daw, out of order ng aircon, no? Okay. Nagsasalita, sinabi na daw. Kung sabi ko sa ng CR dito, tatlong stalls lang, yung CR ng babae, siguro mga 20 meters away ka pa lang sa CR na aamoy na lang. So self-respect na lang, respeto na lang sa ating kapwa. We are supposedly almost, globally, we're trying to be competitive. We're trying to gain our status in at least our ASEAN region. And this is the type of terminal we have, the first one. So talagang ang laki ng problema dyan. The government really has to be able to buy its own land. Ngayon, I met with the bus association, the provincial bus association. Proposal nila. And I will let them speak in our next meeting. Gasto sa terminal. Yung association ng provincial
No cost
buses,
to the government.
no cost to the government. We will submit the plan, but we know how to design a terminal so that all of us will be able to
Common use.
maximize our time.
Common use nila.
Common use nila, syempre hindi nila papamitan yan. Ayaw nila malugi sila. Now, what the government will just look out for is the safety of, obviously, the passengers, the footbridges, how to connect to them. Wow, if they can make it state-of-the-art, why not? That will be one thing less in the mind of Secretary Tugade, supervision na lang. So, the emergency powers, I guess if we don't have this kind of setup under the PPP, we can perhaps grant them to do that. So this is something that we're looking into. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. If we will just keep it open and we will allow stakeholders to really have a stake in their...
And it will be a model for the others to follow.
Tapos, wala pa nga tayo sa north eh. So kung makita natin successful dito, eh di mas lalo na. Ang alam ko dito sa South Terminal, dyan sa Rita Gate, Ayala yan. So, we'll probably, may commercial value yan for them, pero dapat talaga may consultation also with the bus operators para talaga yung time and motion nila. But at least, reputable yung kukunin natin.
Pero at that, they don't pay yan. Kasi private, commercial, they pay. The public will have to pay for that. Mas maganda yung sa yung sila, diba?
Sila. Pero baka nga malingil rin sila. Oo nga, ma'am. So kailangan matanong yan. Tulad ng mga PPP natin ng nakarang administrasyon, yung yan ang hindi natin masyadong gusto. Kasi may premium na binabayad, kaya tumataas ang fees sa end user tayo yun. Either toll road, airport, terminal fee, etc.
Terminal fee, just from the maintenance. You have the maintenance. And speaking of Secretary Tugade, I just heard kanina sa radio reports that the OTR Secretary Tugade is now the traffic czar, quote unquote, because it assumed over the MMDA.
It's actually a suggestion from a few people. Kasi there should be a central person in charge who actually has the power to wield. The problem with MMDA before, they had a very schizophrenic section. Hindi mo malaman, ano ba kayo? Traffic ba kayo?
And that description is schizophrenic.
Relief operations ba kayo? Kayo ng Metro Manila, hindi naman Philippine Tiles, yung mga
Kaya ako nga naman.
underpass natin. So, parang iniisip natin, dapat may isang point person na pwede natin purihin at pwede na natin sisihin. Ngayon, sa pagkakausap namin kay Secretary Tugade, mukha naman may leadership style.
Sa Department of Transportation, sa wala communication, talagang full-time na
talaga po. So, we'll see. The important thing is to have a person that's directly responsible. And one of the things that he proposed is to have a central coordinating agency that will supersede and be above all of the local governments. Kasi ang mahirap po niyan, ito MMDA, pero lumiko ka ng konti, dito local government na in charge. So, gusto mong freely flowing ang traffic dito, pero pag kumaliwa na, hindi nagtotoo dito dahil si Mayor ang in charge dyan. Hindi lahat ng mga kapigil is barado rin. Diba? So there has to be really one central one that will override the others.
Do you need a separate legislative proposal and a new law to define the Department of Transportation taking over the traffic engineering and taking out of the schizophrenic setup of the MMDA and leading them to the beautification, etc.
You know, perhaps so that we won't be dependent on an emergency power, we probably have to revisit the local government code and also the MMDA charter, whatever you call it. MMDA charter ba yan? O kung ano man, whatever created the MMDA. But with the emergency powers in the meantime, while we're still not even drafting it yet, but certainly we need to look at this. Isa pa po yan sa mga i-guess namin dyan, ma'am, sa aming hearing, yung mga constitutionalists. Kasi po, di ba, emergency powers, ang isa sa hinihingi ni Secretary Tugade, para wala ng mga TRO from the lower courts. Opo, hindi natin alam kung pinapalagay sa emergency powers, pipigilan mo yung korte na mag-issue ng TRO. Dahil, ang alam ko, sa martial law, mga pwedeng isuspend ng Supreme Court o ano, baka yung lower court. So, we need somebody that will discuss this. We'll have the Solicitor General. At then, sino pa yung ibigay natin na Florin Milbay, right?
Speaking of emergency powers that will be granted to President Duterte, given the how many days already, 65 days already into power, into office of President Duterte, and given the accomplishment and maybe mga libo-libo statements, are you not worried to give him emergency powers? Given his tendency to abuse on language, abuse on language so far, and the questions sometimes now, he was at the Senate that human rights violations.
I am not afraid to grant emergency powers if I feel that we have the safeguards there. There's also, with those checklists, Congress has the power to withdraw. Okay? Just like the pronouncements of the president when he says, you know, I will declare this and that. We know the 1987 Constitution specifically was created to prevent something like that. So unless you go the revolutionary route, which is already emergency powers or not, you can always invoke it. So in my case, my conscience will be clear granting it, as long as I know that we have all the safeguards
within the Constitution itself. All those are protocols of the sitting president. Yeah. Anyway, ma'am, since we're talking of President Duterte, I know you were very close during the presidential debate. You were very close to President Duterte. How do you now feel? I mean, being at Malacanang.
From the time I conceded, and I spoke
And you were the first one to concede.
Yes, ma'am. I did that for the media. I did it para hindi na kayo mag-isip ng maaga pa para ito.
Para ka rin si Duterte. Ang God hours ang press ko.
Or maagang maaga. Di ba? Hindi, ginawa natin yun. Because ever since naman, my goal was really to offer an alternative, to offer solutions to our countrymen, and to respect the electoral process. It was a clear lead. Ba't makakabais pa yung drama? So going back to your question, the last time I spoke to him, yung huli ko pag-usap, yung nag-concede na ako, hindi ko pa siya nakapag-usap.
Okay, ato na.
Wala naman.
Hindi siya nag-thank you, Grace, Senadora, Madam.
Nag-thank you na siya, nagtawanan na kami nung nag-concede ako. There's always naman an element of, kung naalala ninyo, yung aking pag-concede, mababaw lang naman. Ang sabi ko, congratulations. Hihingi sana ako ng favor. Hindi sana ako mag-favor sa kakaalan. Pwede ba, huwag na rin ako tawagin yung Amerikano. Sapagkat Number one, hindi naman totoo, ang Amerikano yung Vice President. Mas mukhang Amerikano.
Sino ba Vice President? Si Lenny? Si Cayetano, akala. Ay, talaga ha?
Hindi, ang Amerikano, mas mukhang Amerikano yung Vice President mo.
Tsaka ako lang na siya. Nano niya nagkano?
He is certified, well, whatever, but he's natural born. You know, that's why I'm telling you what's legal is not necessarily, or hindi lahat ng legal ay makatanungan. Diba? Parang you have to also look at the spirit of the law. Kaya nga, sinasabi ko, tama na kami. Wala nang tigil yun. That's why this is like so trademark. I think that if there's anything naman with everybody running, with President Duterte, at least from the way I know him, of course I don't know him exactly also at the very deep level, but intentions are good. So I could trust him in that way. Maybe our doing or achieving things would be slightly different, but I think the intention is there. So I wasn't worried about it, and I was quite open and at peace conceiving. No, I will be supportive of any initiatives in the Senate that will be good for the country. So there was a very good will from the beginning. Somebody took a shot, somebody from the Davao group took a picture of him while we were speaking in one form.
Did he apologize to you?
Well, no. Again, I didn't expect that from him and knowing him.
No, he apologized to Soreno, di ba? Publicly.
Wala naman din. Ang sabi niya sa akin, hindi kasi alam mo naman yun na, anong tawag nun sa political lang yan. In fact, nung nag-uusap kami, napanggit ko na yun sa kanya, nung hold up kami sa isang holding group ng TV5 doon sa Cebu. Kami magkasama ng halos 2 oras, di ba? I called him in na at the time. I said, bakit niyo naman sinasabi yan tungkol sa akin? Kasi, ano lang yan, parang sa mga province. I forget exactly what he said. Sir, national figure. National na kayo ngayon, eh, di ba? Parang malalaman. But from then on, being fair to him, since the Cebu debate, he never brought it up again. I don't know why he even used try initially. Maybe because he had to be able to distinguish himself from me. But I'm not saying that all is fair in love, war, and politics. But certainly this one is forgivable in a sense that it was an issue that needed to be addressed, and I feel that I've addressed it credibly also. And we went to the highest court of the land to come up with a decision. So no matter what they say, confidence somehow.
Ano ko, binilo ko na, hindi ko na Amerikano, Amerikana ka.
Hindi, pwede niya sabihin pero hindi. Basta the whole time, marami siyang comments dun sa dalawang katunggali namin. Ayoko na lang sabihin kasi.
Tama na kayo, yung interaction na, hindi na nagbigay ng light moments.
Kaya nga dahil mas censored pa nga yung mga pinuhusapan namin sa loob. So paglabas ko,
sabi na kayo, di ba nakaka-appreciate na
okay na, hindi parang, pero background po nun, hindi naman kami nagkakilala dahil lang. 2013, sinuportahan naman niya ako sa pagkasenator. Nung namatay si FTJ, papupunta kami Davao ng mga ko, siya na kasi kasama namin doon. So, it's not like I just...
So, you have any regrets, Rania?
You know what? No, I never regret having offered myself as an alternative to the public. Kung maalala po ninyo, nung ako po nag-desisyon, ang pagpipilian lamang po ninyo doon ay 2. Diba? Sabi ko naman, siguro, nakatrabaho ko na yung isa doon dahil sa lahat ng hearing, alam ko na yung estilo niya, boboto, parang ayoko na. Gusto ko mas mabilis ang usad ng mga proyekto, ng mga pagpapago sa ating bansa. Yung isa naman, iniisip ko, gusto ko ba ito maging halimbawa sa ating mga anak? Ayun naman, kasi para bang nangyari na lahat ng ito, nagawa mo na ang lahat ng yan, mahahalal ka pa. siguro, nung mga panahon na yon, kung nakita ko may isa pang alternatibo, marahil hindi ako tumuloy. Siguro isa na mas may karanasan, isa na pareho yung aming advokasya, malinis, makakapagbigay ng inspirasyon. Gayun pa man, what other, to actually force yourself to review the problems of the country. Well, aside from the Senate base, ito kasi, you have to study every single issue, every single department. And if there's anything I really did, was to make sure that I understood it, that I spent countless hours reading up on all these things. So ngayon, hindi ako natatakot. Kasi napag-aralan ko na rin yan eh. Kahit na sa ibabaw lang, skimming through it. Kung alam, hindi mo marirealize na kaya mo palang 3 oras na tulog araw-araw.
And you lost 20 pounds during the campaign.
It is the most expensive weight loss program ever. So,
I will not ask how much because you submitted already sa comment.
it's already done na. Submitted to comment. Kasi totoo naman yung binibigay namin doon.
So weight loss.
Kaya, yung amount ng campaign spending namin, maniniwala ba kayo ako yung highest?
How much?
Sa
Oo,
within the
highest?
spending.
Baka mo most honest.
I believe,
Dilihat mo
ano
lahat.
sa ano, well, at least dun sa mga iba. Basta, namin, pero I don't believe na ako yung pinakamataas.
Most honest siguro.
Maraming mga nagpukwento sa akin, may isang kandidato na marami kasing kakilala sa mga komunidad na yon na sasabihin, hindi na nire-receive.
Okay. Anyhow, we just had an election last May 9, presidential elections. And October, malapit na, we will be having another barangay SK elections. And now there are proposals in Congress which Congress supports the barangay SK elections. And I think that we will have a public hearing on that proposal. Anong take mo rin lang?
Maraming nagre-request ng mga barangay na ipagpaliban na muna. At honestly, initially I was thinking, masyado rin maikli kasi yung term sa ng barangay. So when we deliberate on that in the Senate, we'll just make sure that extending their term is not for them to be able to abuse their position, but to actually be able to see their programs through. But in the case of the SK, alam mo, meron isang writer na sinabi nga na yung mga projects ng SK, sobrang flash in the pan. Di ba? Magpapatayo sila ng isang basketball goal, ganito na. Okay naman yung programs for the youth. But perhaps in tandem with the programs of this administration for rehabilitation, maybe the SK can have programs to actually include those ex-addicts or recovering addicts. Part of the budget should go to a counseling program and activities so that we can have that rehabilitation. Kasi as you know, we have about 500,000 ba na addict surrenderies, 600,000 na or rehabilitation centers around the country. So talagang kulang. So part of our proposal was to have DOH. They already have a program for certain addiction. It will give medication, counter medications for that, and also maybe portions of every hospital for recovering addicts. Kasi the meantime na we're building those rehab centers that we need. Somebody donated 1 billion,
Yes.
SNC. So, but they still will at least take about a year or two to be able to build those structures.
Heard you yesterday on your take at the Senate hearing on the human rights violation, and you're the most calm and the most voice there na kasi yun ang
Bias is related tayo somehow.
hindi maganda yung point mo, di ba? Na bakit the way that drug users are being treated na somehow wala second chance.
Ang sinabi ko, I acknowledge the help of the CHR as well as the PNP. Both of them have a role to play and to balance each other out. When you talk about, people always ask me about the death penalty. My position during the campaign and until now is perhaps for repeat offenders and for heinous crimes. But there are 5 pillars kasi of justice. You have community, you have law enforcement, you have the courts, and then you also have uh, the prisons, the prison system, correction. Sabi ko na ba yun? Ano pa kayo sa nakalagay? Basta, that's all part of the process. Nakita naman natin ang ating mga kulungan. It's so inhuman. Summary killings and extrajudicial killings. Ang nangyayari, if we allow the death penalty, but without those people having the chance to defend themselves. So it's actually double whammy. It's worse. Diba? Why I have to also give some moral boost to the CHR. Some people who are impatient would probably say, pagpagulo lang tayo. And trust me, pag nawala yan, mas nakakatakot also for us. But I also have to remind, I thank the PNP chief because I said, if there's anything that he was good at, he is a good communicator. Naiintindihan siya ng ating mga kababayan eh. Initially, they were saying this human rights violations hearing would probably administration. But because he had such an effective spokesperson who was saying, look, I really don't want to do this. I'm tired already. But this is the direction. Yes, exactly. People all the more like him. Sabi ko, you're a good communicator. Importante, naiintindihan ng tao kung anong ginagawa niya, nakasalalay sa balikat nila yan. Pero sabi ko nga, paalaala din, ang kapangyarihan nakakadin lang. Diba? Minsan, pagka sobra ka ng makapangyarihan, nakalimutan mo na ang kapangyarihan ginagamit mas madalas dapat para depensahan. Parang, alam mo naman ako nila, showbiz yung angle. A few good men. Alam mo yung ano doon?
Yes.
Diba? Bakit sila ng court martial na lonely mga marine officers
Si
sila
Tom
doon?
Cruise and si arguments ng dalawa.
Oo, yan naman ni Jack Nicholson.
You can't handle the truth. Ang sabi ni Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth.
Tapos, ano man sinabi nito?
Ano mo sabi no?
Ito napagdaan sa, alam ko lang
You
yung
can't handle the truth.
crystal, alam mo yung crystal. But, sabi ng isang marine, parang, bakit tayo dito? Sinisisi. We just followed orders. Diba? Ang sagot, diba? Because we were supposed to. Parang, what we needed to do was to defend the defenseless. That was the time.
In your few minutes of talking with me, nakita ko na yung priority mo sa legislative priority mo, emergency powers bill, na FOI, death penalty, sa drug rehab.
Ay, hindi naman priority yung death penalty sa atin.
Okay.
But it will come up.
At least we know your stand.
Yeah, you have my stand. But as I said, first, reform our judiciary. And then, di ba, may program na ngayon ng na anti-drugs. Pwede ba maghintay muna tayo kung magiging effective to? Kaya hindi mo kailangan death penalty. Enforcement lang ang kailangan. Pero once it becomes apparent that this is the priority bill and it will be pushed, the safeguards. Kasi sa atin din mga kababayan, nakakatakot rin. So ilalagay dyan isang provision na death penalty agad for a certain number of kilos of drugs na nakikitaan sa'yo. Eh kung may anak ka nga, na pinantahan, tapos nag-tip, death penalty agad. So tignan muna natin po kung ano yung magiging mga kasama po ng provision.
So given those priorities, do you think there's a need now for the president to build the letter?
I think they will now. Absolutely sayang. That was a missed opportunity during the last administration. I think more than, I'm sorry, Attorney Aika, how many bills were vetoed during the last administration?
How many?
But okay, 30?
Wow, 30
more.
Na-monitor nyo?
If I'm not mistaken, a little more from than that.
29 dapat, 29 yung nakukuhaan. So,
29.
Pero may mga nag-veto.
No, yan.
That's
Ang
more
controversial pa.
So parang iisip mo, namin
The
di ba?
legislative process takes a long
A
while.
long time. Tapos, mabibito lang. Yun, that would have been prevented legislative
Hindi na waste ang
advisory council.
wasted so much time,
Para-
money, effort.
Mr. President, ibibito mo ba to? Hindi. Pag sinabi naman ng Presidente, ibibito ko yan. But Congress feels passionate about it. Ibibito yan, i-ano natin, override natin with 3/4
Oh,
votes.
kaya
diba?
last priority, babasa.
Less priority, or let's see, katulad ng last time, yung Social Security, 2,000 pesos increase. Kung malalaman ng magbibito, baka naman pwede kausapin, magkano kaya nyo ngayon? Tapos mag-ano tayo, di ba? Salary increase. Pwede naman sana gano'n. Kesa all or nothing.
Oo. So wala pang sounding out from the Senate if that we will be convinced.
A lot of things.
A lot of things kasi we hear from media first. And apparently, the LEDAC will be convened specifically to discuss emergency powers.
Assuming na mga, take your seat na. Assuming ang House nakapag-constitute ng kailang counterpart committee, how long will you post upon the both set chambers to come out to the emergency powers?
In the parliamentary courtesy, we cannot impose a time on them. Perhaps we can do it on the side as a legislators, informal. Pero kami po,
Deadline.
kami po sa Senado, sabi ko nga, before we go on break in December, and I say this
Yun ang
only,
first break ng December pa.
opo, meron pa kaming break ng, kaya lang ma'am, kahit na gusto ko yung itulak na, oy, maghiling tayo araw-araw . Number one, ang mga resource persons, hindi ganun kabilis kumuha ng data. Number two, tapos senador, magpa-budget hearing rin. Priority yon. Lahat ng kwarto, kuha na yan ng mga, kung lumabas ka naman, wala ka rin makakasamang senador, dahil mahirap rin kumuha ng quorum. So, basta lang, by December, hopefully magawa na. Alam mo, 3 buwan lamang. Tapos ko na yung FOI sa Senado. 8 months na pasara namin. Ang FOI noon, nung 16th Congress, nagawa namin yung mabilis. So ito, emergency powers, mas gusto nga nila ito dahil ang FOI, maraming takot dyan, mga records nila. Pero itong emergency powers, mas less takot sila dyan. So I think it would be a lot faster.
So, nilifile mo ba yung FOI bill?
Opo, na-refine na, and not just me, several senators also.
But we
refine the
gave back
version.
to states legislative step one of the legislative process.
Yes, but there's a growing awareness now of the need for FOI. So I feel that in the Senate, it will be hard pressed to find somebody who will go against FOI. Wait, you know what, ma'am, by early next year, I think, kasi maghihiring na ako in September.
Sa council sa napunta yun, public information,
Public information mo, kaya ayokong bitawan kahit na, kasi, and I'm looking at, ito, sobra na nga to . 3 hearing tapos na to . 3 maiikling hearing kasi yung mga provisions dyan, talagang ginugol namin ang oras namin, pati yung exceptions, lahat na wala namang makakalaban sapagkat yung mga FOI advocates mismo, PCIJ, Malumangahas, Nepo Malaluan, Ramon del Rosario, yung mga abogado, input na dun sa last.
what will happen to the FOI or PO number 2? Will it be adopted there? You need to get the FOI to all executive departments.
Of course, this will this will be more recent. That's something we really supersede that, attorney, right? It will have to supersede that. Kasi yun, executive order yun, ito naman batas po.
Will how do you modify PO number 2?
It will institutionalize.
It will institutionalize, but kasi ganito yan, ito yung primary difference now. Because it is now going to be a law, there will be actually criminal liability, not just administrative. There will actually be budget allocation for the different offices to comply. As you know, you have to do archiving that entails expense. If you have to have online connectivity, that will entail expense, a proper budget. And number 3, the exceptions set by this administration for the executive order is not clear yet. I had a meeting with Secretary Andanar in my office yesterday. and I asked a copy of the exceptions that they will have
Oh,
in their
templates
FOI,
nila.
templates. So we can forward you a copy. But one thing that I'm not very comfortable with is in this administration's EO, they will allow each department to have their definition of complying with the FOI, what their exceptions will be.
No, o yun ang problematic
Eh,
of exception.
Anong exceptions ng each department,
Yeah,
diba?
oo.
Eh sa amin po, general na, ito lang ang pwede ninyong exceptions. You cannot go and have your own exception unless it is something that will fall under the exceptions we set for.
Yes. So, the PO number 2, yung to track yun, isa yung sa executive department, basta compliance sila sa with FOI law.
Kaya mag-contradict doon. If it does have a conflict, then the one that will prevail is the actual
national
law.
Yes, ma'am. Pero ma'am, sasabihin niyo ba, meron naman yung kasi every time there's a problem, they create a new body.
Body,
Oo.
FOI body.
Oo.
Wala pa naman. Wala nakalagay doon. Ombudsman po yung nakatala na...
Basta may budget lang to implement.
May budget. Kasi each department will have to comply
Okay.
under or with the law. Meron kami kasi doon e-provision. Kasi part of information is accessibility.
Okay.
So we had actually a meeting with Open Government Partnership with the Philippines as a signatory. That part of hiding information from the public is to flood them with information that they don't need. Alam niyo yun? Yung parang pag may kaso kayo, sasabihin nung bigyan mo kaming kopya ng mga ebidensya ninyo, mga ano ninyo, bibigyan mo ng isang storage full of information na hindi nila mahanap yung kailangan nila. That's why there are certain things that the government is required to upload immediately in their website and others not necessary anymore. Like, ano yung mga i-upload? SALN ng bawat ng mga officers, Internal Revenue Allotment, items to bid, yung action budget ng department, employment opportunities, yung mga ganon, na mabilis mo naman kita, hindi ka na kailangan pumunta sa office para mag-request.
Final question to you, and then we open the floor for questions. Anong galing mo sa budget meetings mo? Anong hinahandle mo?
Hindi ako vice chair ng Committee on Finance, so I don't really have to defend the budget.
Okay.
The only
Pero anside sa'yo.
ang tignan, yung ando dun sa committee namin, yung mga mapupunta doon, kunyari, public information, na yung sa ilalim dyan, MPRCP, FECP, yung mga ganon. Tapos, yung medyo malaki public services. Kasi, dyan lahat ng mga public services is to be able to do oversight of land, air, maritime, transport. So lahat that has anything to do with that, pati airport, pati kaya budget yan.
Kasama ba sa emergency power to airports? Na
Worst, it's a traffic, but
You asked for reports.
we're asking for a report. Kasi ma'am, they need to do certain emergency procurement, like night landing lights in the provinces, so that we can have flights 24 hours. Kasi problema ma'am, kung pumunta kayo ng Isabela, dating ng alas 5, hindi ka napapayagan lumipad dahil wala namang night landing. Sayang, di ba? All provincial flights can come in. And then also other procurement, standing runway so that they can accept bigger airplanes to land.
Oo, kasama yun.
Hindi ko alam kung traffic lang talaga ngayon.
Pero may traffic din sa Manila, saka ng other.
That's why, as we go further along this discussion, we would like to know exactly from Secretary Tuglate what his priorities are. Kasi, from my understanding, land traffic pa yung pinag-uusapan namin. Although, from CAAP and all these other air
Problematic din ang air
transport
traffic natin.
na baka makasama nga rin yun.
Yun ang mas malalaking big items, big ticket items yun.
Tayo magiginawahan yun naman kung definitely maayos.
So, si Governor Joey Salceda, number one, hindi pa people international airport.
Hanggang hindi pa nga.
Oo.
Text na nga ako. Sabi ko, meron po tayong phone question from people.
Okay, the floor is now open to your questions.
Thank you for listening. Perhaps you already have all the information. You just enjoy your breakfast and we can just have a chat off the record.
While she's taking her coffee, Rita?
Yes, ma'am.
Like the way our live streaming properties.
Can you comment on the fact that the OTC Secretary Tugadi maintained MRT General Manager Benefe was responsible under Abaya? I mean, how can the OTC fix a problem while maintaining is the cause of the problem? Second, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead with your second one.
The second one was, can you also comment on the hiring of Yusek Quintanar, formerly from Ayala? I mean, isn't there a conflict of interest there, considering that Ayala's many projects with the DOTC?
Okay, Vika, when I was in the hearing, let me start first with Buenapea. Hindi muna si Quintana. When I was in the hearing, so syempre, sinisipat-sipat mo sino mga nandito sa audience, di ba? Hindi lang yung resource, tinitingnan mo. Lahat sila mga familiar yung issue sa akin kasi I was helping Senator Search before. So kaya subcommittee chair. Sabi ko, familiar po. Sabi ko, medyo inconspicuous. Sabi ko, kilala to. Sa kampanya ba to? Oh my God, si Buenapea pala. Pero wala siya dun sa official delegates na nakaupo doon ng DOD. Yes, I have misgivings about that. And I will ask Secretary Tugate, because at the time, I didn't see him until the hearing was almost over. What is he doing there? Actually, there were some questions at the time when he met, again, allegedly, inappropriately, with certain suppliers. Okay, so parang, hindi na dahil eh, parang, anyway, we will ask it, because I don't want to speak naman unless I have all the facts, but certainly, that is part of the GMK, so you're part of the failings. That is glaring. Now, if there's no case against him, and he is a consultant, what's his position?
General Manager.
All over lang.
Definitely, I am. For now, I am not very confident about that particular decision of Secretary Tugade. I would like him to defend the reappointment of this general manager. But the sad thing is, in our next meeting, I hope he'll still be there. Baka na.
Marami pa rin
Labo-labo.
breaches of MRT, no?
Marami pa rin. Pero, we're giving them a free pass now. But again, let's be realistic. They've been in office for 50 days, or a little more.
Yeah.
You can't naman really, the problems are really pabaya. Okay. Now, we would be hard pressed to find people who's not have had a connection with one company or another to be in government. Some of them, Cesar Purisima, for example, has worked in kung saan-saan pa. Now, of course, Ayala is a direct participant in all these PPP projects. We just have to be more vigilant. That's why I said, FOI compliant. Doon ba sa mga building nila, we can see references, special treatments given to a particular company because of him. If there is, then definitely we should question it. But right now, talents from the private sector is actually what we need in the public sector because they have a certain discipline and also understanding certain technicalities that we might not find in our pool of career government people. So bantayan lang natin. He has more to prove about being fair and unbiased because of his background.
Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. Anna Palasiopo from CNN Philippines. Ma'am, I'd just like to go back to the emergency power. So the contracts that you were mentioning and the private sector individuals that you would be inviting to look at these contracts? Are these the contracts that will come in once the emergency powers are granted?
Yes, these are the, for example, they plan to build a road somewhere. They will be invoking this with the emergency powers. The oversight committee, government actually enters into the contract. The DOT will submit to us their proposed contract, the supplier that they chose or the contractor, and that oversight committee composed of the Senate, Congress, and our invited consultants from the private sector will look into that contract to make sure that it is not one-sided and the government will not be at the losing end of the bargain.
Actually, public and private initiative when it comes to the emergency powers.
Others to be a part of it because Congress has to regain the trust of the people. I think that we've been bruised so much in the past years, starting with the PDAC in 2013. So even if you say there's congressional oversight, people are skeptic about it. So to relieve us also of that undue burden, let's get the private sector in so that they, and I plan to get from the private sector one particular interest group. Iba-iba, let's get also from activist group to come in, some academics to come in. Pero ayoko rin magulo. Too many cooks will also spoil the broth, diba? So they are there to give their opinion, but ultimately it is the oversight that will decide. But at least open. They can go out in the public. They can challenge and say, sinabi namin kay Senator Pogo, hindi naman tayo pinakinggan. Oh. Pero if my conscience is clear and I know it's because it's a ridiculous suggestion, I'll say, hindi ko pinayagan, hindi dahil malulugi tayo, o hindi dahil walang katuturan o hindi kasi yan pwede gawin. Diba? Oh, kaya parang talagang open dapat para walang sisihan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions from the floor? From Gideon?
May tatanong lang ako. Kung ngayon, sitwasyon, ang failure ng LMPA, ay yung plano to revisit yung ahensya na yan. Kasi created during Marcos time to please. Ngayon po, sa tingin niyo po ba, at this point of time, katulad yung sabi niyo, yung terminal line na ninyo, pinagmamalaki ni Tolentino yun. In-invite pa kami. Yung pala, press release lang, photo release lang. Ano po ba ang take nyo sa MMDA?
Sinabi na dyan. Okay.
Hindi, pero sir, tama po kayo. Sa tingin ko talaga, unang-unang kailangan nga ibisitahin yan. Tignan kung ano bang mandato talaga nila hanggang saan sila. Pero ngayon, at least malinaw na mapapailalim sila at least sa traffic. Kasi po sir, kung naalala po ninyo, di ba, ang MMDA noon, ang dami ginawa, pero parang sabog-sabog. Doon nagkaroon ng Yolanda, sila yata may water filtration system na dinala din sa Leyte. Hindi, okay lang naman yun, di ba? Tumutulong sa kapwa. Then, hindi ba dapat NDRM meron yan or DSWD i-endorse sa kanila at kayo ay manatili dito sa Metro Manila, ano nangyari? Nagiging ng mga tatakbo rin. Okay. Now, hindi mo masisisi na gawing staging na maaaring masabing gawing staging ang ahensya nila. Pero ayusin mo yung trabaho. Diba? Not at the expense of the people na you will go beyond your mandate just to impress when it's actually not something that you need to do. Another thing is, the MMDA, part of their job is also to do the Metro Manila Film Festival. So, papakamot ang ulo mo, di ba? Parang,
Culture and arts lang.
Paano kayo nangyari dyan? Di ba? Parang, masagal na yun. Hindi lang naman kay Tolentino. Noon pa po yan. Siguro dapat dyan, yung League of Mayors or whatever ng Metro Manila, sila na. Kasi kung bakit may bibigyan sa MMDA na nagiging parang platform pa nila for other things na, okay, tuloy, nagpagawa ng sinihan sa MMDA. Meron silang mini theater doon. Tapos nagpapalabas sila ng mga independent fields in support of independent fields. That's fine. They want to support, but maybe not the MMDA. Kaya nag-away, si Chairman Toto at saka si Chairman Tolentino kasi sinasabi, ba't kayo papalabas ng pelikula dyan? Hindi naman kayo accredited na silihan, ano ba yan? But naman, it's a government agency. We can show everything without having to go to the MPRCB. That's true, but the point is that really sketching your man?
Di ba yung mga bus na nagpapalabas?
Thank you, sir.
Di ba yung mga buses, may mga gusto ng MPRCP na bakit kasi papalabas ito mga pambata nandun sa loob ng bus, di ba?
Oh, yun talaga.
Shake drill, earthquake, fire,
Yung shake drill.
Oo.
Yung Senado pa na si shake drill.
Oo, nag-shake drill din kayo.
Wala pa si
Metro Manila kayo eh. Kaya tataka ako Metro Manila, MMDA all over the nation na siya.
Siguro well, anyway, maraming pwedeng gawin.
Okay.
School campaign.
So,
Dapat yung NDRMC di ba? Parang lakihan natin, sabi ko nga, ang NDRMC dapat gawin parang Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA na. Because it's own. Kasi ngayon naman, sa lahat ng ibang like
Interagency.
interagency. So parang, kawawa naman si Director Palma ba yun? Director siya.
General. Retired General.
At that time,
Alexander Pama.
guys, he's really good. I mean,
Yes.
this guy is so credible. To rely on the AFP for them. I mean, granted, we need to be able to do that also in an emergency situation. The US does that with their National Guard, but they should have direct jurisdiction in times of natural calamities and not to be at the mercy of the other secretaries because that's your expertise, is how to be able to handle an emergency situation.
Yes, ma'am. A question? Meron kayo question? Marvin?
During yung hearing yesterday, sinabi ni General Pato that there were 756 na nakatayan during police operations. Sinabi niya na lahat ko arrest. So, in effect, parang clear na yung mga plans. Are you convinced sa sinabi niya nito?
Yun ang nakarating sa kanya. The bail-assisted arrest. His role is to defend his men. He will not incriminate his men naman, even in the Senate. So it is our job now. Where is your operational report? Kasi bago ka naman gumawa ng isang meron yung report eh. Kung may lead ka, sino-sino yung mga tinutuntun mo. Number 2, merong, ano ba yung tawag dito pagkatapos? Debriefing? Pagkatapos nun. Number 3, ano yung status ng mga kaso na na-file na ninyo? Out of that 700, or out of the extrajudicial, yung mga vigilante groups, na, wala pa yata 50 mga napafile dyan eh. Ilang daan na yun. So ibig sabihin talaga, na nandaban yun. Nakita naman natin kahapon, di ba may pinakita sa TV? Kahapon ba yun? Oo, yung binarag, syempre, oo, sumusurrender na. Syempre, sasabihin, hindi naman ninyo nakikita, naririnig lang ninyo. Pero there's some truth to it, di ba? Parang, there's something that needs to be uncovered. That's why we won't know the whole truth. But again, General Bato cannot incriminate this man until he really knows the situation. But I pray, and we have to be able to assert this, that they always adhere to the truth. And we will remind them that, especially when we have that hard evidence. Ang mahirap din kasi sabihin kay General Bato, you're lying, that's not true. Because we ourselves don't know. Diba? Hindi natin alam kung talagang laban yun. But just by the odds, alam na nila with this administration, shoot to kill ang order pag ikaw ay nagtabay. Kalaban ka pa ba? Diba?
Let's emphasize it. Have a civilian.
Marvin, that's really investigahan ng mas mababang rango ang kanyang chikang iyas. ang nakalagay dyan sa iba, basta, yung implementing rules, dapat ang internal affairs service ang namumuno civilians. Sa Amerika at ibang bansa, talagang hiwalay yan.
Civil supremacy.
Oo, kasi, di ba, the nature of brotherhood yan, culture of brotherhood. Unang-una, mahirap na yun. How can you, parang you don't rap on somebody that you consider as your brother.
Parang few good men.
A few good yan. Walang ano dyan. Walang kapalan. Number two, umaasa ka sa promotion kung alam mong napakalakas nitong at kasama siya dun sa iniisisigan mo, kanino ka magsusumbong sa kanya? Uy, kasama ka dito. Diba parang ano ba yun? So, ang sabi ko, sir, dapat huwag natin, ako, wala akong personal kay Director Deterio. Deterio, yung head ng IAS. Wala akong personal na complaint sa kanya, pero sumusuway tayo sa batas. Ang unang sinabi sa akin ni General De La Rosa, sabi niya, natatakot lang kami kasi pag naglagay kami ng civilian na abogado dyan, baka mamaya may mangyari sa kanya kasi hindi siya police, hindi niya alam yung gagawin niya. Eh, yun ang trabaho ninyo, is to protect him. Diba? To make sure that he's protected. And then eventually I said, kung kailangan independent body mag-protect sa kanya, military, para sila yung nagpo-protecta dito sa umiibig sa police, diba? Bakit hindi? Ang sabi niya, hindi ma'am, ang ginagawa namin ngayon, ang organisasyon, at saka kami maglalagay ng civilian. Yun ang sa unang hearing. Hindi ko nahirit sa kanya, kaya sa second hearing ko na natanong, sabi ko, ngayon nga po mas kailangan ng civilian head. Kasi nag-release kayo ng organisasyon. Ang mangyayari niyan, pag pinatagal ninyo yan at pulis pa rin, maraming pulis na iniimbestigahan, hindi na maiimbestigahan yan. Pagpasok ng civilian, hindi na niya alam ang punot dulo niyan. Ang sabi naman sa akin, at yun naman ang gusto ko kay General Pato, ang sabi niya, hindi, kaagad-agad. Gusto niyo, bukas na, papalitan natin. Apparently, as of yesterday, they already submitted names of suggested civilian heads of the IAS. So, to the President. So sana, ilabas nila yung pangalan niyan, para ngayon pa lang, the credentials and the leanings of those people. Sabi ko nga, the IAS sana, instead of it being under the PNP, should be under the Office of the President. Para, yun yung parang sikreto mata ng President, dyan nga sa organisasyon ng mga police.
Meron dito second question. I think this will be the last one of the floor. Pero I will edit this, related to the FOI. Given now the tension in the families, will the FOI be in the Senate be technically affected? And constitution natin, hindi na only for FOI, it's open na.
Tension in the practice.
Will the FOI bill ba in the Senate be technically affected? Oh, I don't.
No. The only exception that I can look at, which will apply to this particular issue on the SPAT list and every diplomatic issue, is the diplomatic discussions that can affect national security exemption in our FOI. So yung mga backdoor negotiations, they don't need to divulge that. It will jeopardize our standing in the international community and our national security. There is a time frame for it to be made public. After so many years, parang sa ibang bansa, yung Kennedy files, dinabas na, di ba? After so many years, at saka meron din dyan na the FOI can never be used. So, pagka meron dyan, kunyari, binibenta na pala ang Pilipinas na hindi natin alam. Anong diplomatic relations na hindi pwedeng ilabas? Pag meron nagko-commit ng isang treason act na katulad nun, pwede yun i-discuss. Kasi, di ba, it can never cover up a wrongdoing. It is always for the interest of the public.
FOI can be both.
FOI can be both. Like, mamasapa, no? Meron kami executive session. So, for a time being, diba, yung mga pinag-usapan namin doon, executive session. Pero after that, lahat ng mga senador, pumirma na, Tapos na rin natin. Wala namang gusto magbasa, napakapal yan.
Okay, last question daw from Mr. Rosin Pueblo. Wala na. Okay, if there's no more question, I would like to keep in my heart thank our guest today who took her time to be with us. Thank you, Madam. And your closing words, ma'am.
I'm so relieved that I finally did this because I owed you that, ma'am, for a long time. And I don't know what I was apprehensive about. Yun pala, pag hindi ka na kandidato, mas madali na pala yung mga tanong.
Okay,
So, mas okay na.
I was trying to get
Diba?
your presidential.
Yes, judgmental na yung mga ano. Tapos, number two, actually, I've come to admire you also, ma'am, because, being a woman, and especially now, I think we should really talk about women in government, women in business, women in all other sectors. And look at it as something that we can emulate. A woman who's raised successful children. Diba? I talked about your children and how you had to work so hard to be able to let them finish. And I feel that because even in my work now, parang you do things naman talaga for your children. Country for them. Sabi ko nga, I'm happy na lang that having run this, having been a candidate, I did not lose myself or my integrity. I feel is intact in spite of all. Ano sabi ni Taylor Swift? I could build a castle all the bricks in the one. Hindi alam yun, no? May anak kasi akong mga ganun yan, 11 years old. So, yun yung mga kanta ko, Wildest Dreams. So, yan yung mga ganun. Ginagawa natin to, I think the Philippines, our foresight should definitely be, because we tend to look at them now, but we should have the Philippines in how many decades, how do we want it to be?
Thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause, ma'am.
Go! Ma'am, wait. Yay! Sorry. Wait, Mike.
Mabait na kayo sa akin. Diba? Sabihin mo, mabait na kayo. Thank you. Hi, hello. How are you? Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Rina. Yes, sure. Yes, kind of worried. Yes, yes, brother. Yes. Pag hindi halata sa lahat. For Manila State. Senate Star. Yung Manila State. Siya ba yun?
Mami mga boys ko siya.
Magbabawi lang kayo dito dito.
The record yun. Stop broadcast.